Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. New political realities are emerging specifically for the Republicans in the aftermath of the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. This has serious repercussions for the next $3 trillion stimulus, which is going to be an infrastructure plan, the Build Back Better agenda. One thing I believe we can all agree on is that every state in the country needs an improvement in their roads, needs an improvement in their bridges. We need an infrastructure plan. But with the new political realities, what is likely to happen? We're going to cover that, and we're going to cover the overwhelming support for the $1.9 trillion stimulus and how that is going to force a political recalculation, if you will, amongst the Republicans. We'll also take a deep dive and a deep look into what's new in the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan compared with the plan with the first stimulus check and the second stimulus check. Let's jump right in. On your screen, you'll see a tweet from MSNBC Live with Katie Tour. And Katie asked Anna Palmer from Punchbowl News a simple question. What could a party line vote on the stimulus package mean for the future of the Biden agenda, for the future of the infrastructure plan? And this is what Anna Palmer said from Punchbowl News. Infrastructure appears to be the next big bill that they're going to look at. The question is going to be, will a Susan Collins or some other Republican come along for the ride? Let's roll the tape and hear from Anna Palmer.
Anna, you let us know if there's any reason why we should expect this bill not to pass tomorrow when it's brought up for a vote. But I'm more curious about what the party line vote of this portends for the future of the Biden agenda. COVID relief was something that had broad bipartisan support. It is wildly popular around the country. What happens when Joe Biden brings up something like infrastructure, which is also going to cost a lot of money?
Yeah, absolutely. Tomorrow's vote is likely to, as you say, go along party lines. I think it's going to be all Democrats. There might be one stray Democrat who doesn't vote for this, but it is going to the president's desk, his first big legislative achievement. The question, I agree with you, is what happens next? Infrastructure appears to be the next big bill that they're going to look at. Joe Manchin in the Senate has said that he doesn't want it to go along this procedural motion of reconciliation from the beginning, wanting to work with Republicans on this. The question is going to be, will a Susan Collins or some other Republicans come along for the ride and decide that, yes, this is going to be important? The price tag is going to be a big issue for many Republicans who've said this COVID relief bill is too large. They're starting to really come back to some of their talking points before Donald Trump, where they're really focused on debt and deficit. And if that's the case, it's going to make it very difficult for there to be a bipartisan agreement on infrastructure, even though every single state has crumbling bridges and roads and is in dire need of a lot of funding on this issue in particular.
Now, if you thought that was interesting, here's a tweet on your screen from Jonathan Martin, who's a national political correspondent for the New York Times. He wrote, the bill's broad popularity amongst both Republicans and Democrats suggests that Republicans have to move aggressively to polarize or to give up entirely and to change the subject. You've heard me talk about this before on our channel. Politics is about timing, it's about opportunity, it's about tribalism, us against them, and it's about perception. You can see the Republicans start to focus on point 3 and 4 and say, hey, you know, the Democrats are irresponsible, this is a liberal wish list, our future generations will have to pay more in taxes, and it's absolutely terrible, and this is bad for the country, and this, that, and the other. So you can start to see the Republicans try to make this a polarizing moment by making this an us against them moment, by essentially agitating us and by agitating the tribalism that tends to elicit stronger reactions than anything else in politics. In fact, let's take a quick look at the Pew Research article. You can see the headline of the article, broad public support for the pandemic package. Just a third say that it is too much. More Americans say the Biden administration made a good faith effort working with opposition, and they don't say the same of Republican leaders. Here's the first chart that shows you a sizable majority of the public favors President Biden's $1.9 trillion economic plan. So you're seeing both Republicans as well as Democrats essentially in favor of the plan. An overwhelming 70% of those who were surveyed by the Pew Research Center are in favor of the stimulus plan. Here's another chart that shows you that a majority of people feel that the Biden administration, more so than the Republicans, made a good faith effort to work with opponents on the stimulus package. 57% voted yes. And as you can imagine, there was an uneven split between Republicans and Democrats, but the majority said that the president and his administration made a good faith effort at working with the other side relative to the Republicans. Here's another important data point that shows you overwhelming support. The public largely supports the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. You can see the support among men, women, amongst African American individuals, Hispanic, white individuals, Asian individuals, support from all age groups, support from all income levels, and support from Republicans as well as Democrats for this $1.9 trillion stimulus package that is going to pass the House and that will be signed into law by the president. Now, in this next chart, things get even more interesting. This stimulus plan is favored by a majority of lower income Republicans. Now, check this out. This is very interesting. The higher income Republicans basically were not in favor of the plan, but the lower income Republicans, in other words, the lower the income of the Republican, the more likely they were to support the $1.9 trillion stimulus plan. So you can start to see that 63% of low-income Republicans supported the plan compared with 25% of higher income Republicans. And here's something that's even more interesting. When people were asked, is it too much spending? Is there a lot of pork in the bill? Is it an unnecessary, excessively large package? The public was divided and their opinion was based on their income level. Those with lower income levels were more likely to say that it spent too little, but those with higher income levels were more likely to say, hey, it's too much money. Now, this goes back to personal beliefs. Now, I want you to focus your attention on the dark portion of this image here, the portion that corresponds to too little spending. In other words, more should have been done on the stimulus. Take a look at lower income individuals. 37% of them felt that this bill spent too little money, more should have been done. Let's take a look at Democrats. As you can imagine, Democrats support more spending relative to Republicans, at least on the basis of this survey. Let's take a look at those who are Republicans or leaning Republicans, and also those who are Democrats or leaning Democrats. With both political affiliations, individuals in a lower income level were more likely to say that the bill did not spend enough money, because individuals in low income levels need help the most. Speaking of help, I've done detailed videos including the exact components of the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. The one that I get a lot of questions about in the comment section is the one that you see right now here on your screen. This is an MSNBC article. The stimulus bill's child tax credit expansion is exactly the kind of pandemic relief that parents, specifically parents in low income communities, in low income situations, needed desperately to take care of their children, because child poverty and hunger amongst children is a problem that no one should have to face, specifically us in the United States of America. So most parents will get a check of between $250 to $350 per child per month from July through the end of the year. And so this is an important component of this stimulus package. You'll get a link to this article in the description section below, so be sure to check it out. Now, let's shift gears towards an important article in the Wall Street Journal. You'll see this headline, "What's New in the Third Stimulus Package?" By the way, you'll also get a link to this article in the description section below, so be sure to check it out. Now, let's take a look at a visual demonstration of how this bill differs compared to the earlier bills. Let's take a look at this first image, total bill amount by iteration. In March, the stimulus package was $1.7 trillion. In December, the bill that was signed at the last second by former President Trump, that bill was $915 billion. This bill is even larger than the CARES Act, and it's at $1.9 trillion. Now, let's break down this entire bill. Let's start with the top left-hand section, and you'll see that the spending specifically on the pandemic is $123 billion, which, by the way, is why Republicans are very unhappy and Republicans are complaining about the fact that only a small percentage of the bill goes towards the pandemic. The fact is, it was similar in the first bill and the second bill, because large components of the first two bills provided money, provided the Paycheck Protection Program, provided economic injury disaster loans, provided all sorts of money for all sorts of businesses, in addition to stimulus checks and unemployment benefits. So this bill is not all that different, everyone. So to say that, hey, this bill focuses only a small percentage of the money on the pandemic is mischaracterizing the bill as compared to the first two bills. It is just selectively providing information in order to further agitate, in order to create more tribalism, like I mentioned at the start of the video. Politicians thrive on tribalism and on creating further divisions and on making it us against them. Now, the big difference between this bill and the previous bills is that this bill dedicates smaller amounts of money towards small business. You can see $59 billion, and this bill dedicates the largest stimulus check, $410 billion, $1,400 stimulus checks to the average American. This bill also provides more money relative to the first two bills on the expansion of child tax credits, which were essentially non-existent in the first two bills, and more importantly, unemployment benefits. On the bottom right-hand side, you'll see the extension of unemployment benefits, $246 billion to provide a $300 a week booster through September of this year, including a waiver on the first $10,200 in federal taxes on unemployment benefits that were collected in 2020. The truth is, this bill is a supersized version of the first two bills. Let's show you this image on your screen, the deficit impact in select policy areas by bill iteration. This is super important. Let's start with the stimulus checks. The first bill, which was a March 2020 bill, and you can see that on the left side of your screen, was $301 billion for stimulus checks, $1,200 per adult, $500 per child. The second bill, December 2020, was $166 billion for stimulus checks, $600 per person. By the way, neither the first bill nor the second bill included stimulus checks for adult dependents. The third major bill, which is going to be passed in the next 24 to 48 hours in the House and will be signed into law by President Biden. There he is. Hello, President Biden. Thank you so much. This new $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan allocates $410 billion, which is $1,400 per person, including $1,400 for children and $1,400 for adult dependents. This is significant. That's why there's significantly more money for stimulus checks in this latest bill. Now, let's take a look at education. The third bill allocates $176 billion for education relative to $40 billion and $82 billion for the prior two stimulus packages. And as far as the pandemic policy is concerned, we're talking about money for vaccine testing, tracing, and distribution. This bill allocates $123 billion relative to the first two bills, which allocated $28 billion and $55 billion respectively. So how is the $123 billion in allocated funding from the American Rescue Plan actually spent? Because it's designed to help us fight the pandemic. Here's an image on your screen that shows you how the $123 billion, which is the component of the entire $1.9 trillion stimulus plan, the $50 billion are spent on testing and contact tracing, $47 billion are spent on disaster relief funding and funeral expenses related to the pandemic. $16 billion are spent on vaccine distribution, enhancing education, making sure that you get all the information that you need so that you can make a decision relating to whether you want to take the vaccine or not, and enhancing supply chains, making sure that the vaccine is available at a local Rite Aid, a local Walgreens, a CVS pharmacy, or maybe even your local grocery store, because that is starting to happen. I'm actually starting to notice that in my neighborhood. And $10 billion is set aside to use the Defense Production Act to buy and distribute medical supplies, including syringes, to make sure that the distribution of the vaccine is enhanced. Now let's take a look at how the $246 billion in unemployment benefits were spent. As you can see on your screen, the $246 billion was spent in unemployment benefits, specifically the $300 a week booster on top of state unemployment benefits through the 6th of September. There's also $143 billion in a modification of tax policy, if you will. So this, by the way, is going to create a greater sense of overload for the IRS, because the IRS already has to create guidelines on the $10,200 waiver of federal income taxes for individuals who are on unemployment for the first $10,200 in unemployment income during 2020 for households that had an adjusted gross income of under $150,000. So the IRS already has their hands full. On top of that, now the IRS is going to be involved in the distribution of the money when it comes to the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit. So that's it, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was a very detailed video, but I hope you learned something new. I hope you understand the political ramifications of what is likely to happen going forward, the overwhelming bipartisan support, specifically among low-income individuals when it comes to the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, and most importantly, the components of how this money is going to be spent. Because at the end of the day, this is taxpayer money. The United States has only one source of revenue, major source of revenue. A majority of the revenue of the United States government comes from you, the middle income taxpayer. So keep that in mind. All the duties and levies that we charge other countries, that's next to nothing. All the income comes from the United States taxpayer. So this money is fundamentally your money that is being reallocated throughout the system. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. Organizing this information, presenting it to you in an easily digestible way, editing these videos and making sure that this is easy and quick for you to understand takes a lot of effort. All I ask of you is please click the like button, please subscribe, please enable notifications. That would mean a lot to me personally, and that also helps out the YouTube algorithm. Thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.